The human spirit, it's astonishingly resilient, isn't it? Even when faced with, well, unimaginable hardship, it seems to seek something profound. Today, we're plunging into one of the most enduring questions of human existence: what truly gives life meaning? We're exploring this through the lens of Viktor Frankl and his monumental work, Man's Search for Meaning. For so many, it's become a truly transformative book, reshaping how they think about life's hardest questions. It's sold millions of copies worldwide. Our mission for this deep dive is to unpack the profound insights Frankl gleaned from his harrowing experiences in concentration camps, and also to explore his revolutionary psychological theory, logotherapy. You'll see how his personal suffering served as the ultimate crucible for his most enduring ideas about, well, how to find purpose.
It's truly remarkable, that Frankl himself viewed the book's bestseller status not really as a personal triumph, but almost as an expression of the misery of our time. He felt it indicated this widespread burning question about the meaning of life that just resonated deeply with people. What's particularly insightful about the book's unique structure is how the autobiographical account, experiences in a concentration camp, provides the existential validation for his theories. Those theories presented in logotherapy in a nutshell. One part really does support the other's credibility.
Yeah, it makes it so much more than just a memoir or a textbook.
Exactly.
The dual nature is what makes it so powerful. And to truly appreciate his journey, we probably need to set the stage a bit. Frankl was a psychiatrist in Vienna, fascinated by the meaning of life from a young age, even corresponding with Sigmund Freud early on. But his life took this fateful turn right before World War II. Despite having an American immigration visa, which could have saved him, he made the profound decision to stay with his elderly parents in Vienna.
A choice driven by this deep sense of responsibility and duty.
Right, and made just before their deportation in 1942. Which of course sealed his fate along with theirs.
The descent into the abyss concentration camp experiences.
So, given Frankl's own decision, which set him on this path, what was that very first psychological shock he observed as people entered that abyss? He begins his account with the bewildering, packed train journey to Auschwitz. 80 people jammed into each coach.
Yeah, and everyone clinging to this belief, this hope that they were just heading to a munitions factory for forced labor.
A kind of denial.
Almost. And what's deeply insightful here is how quickly those basic illusions were shattered. Upon arrival, prisoners experienced what Frankl termed the delusion of reprieve. They saw seemingly well-fed, capos, privileged prisoners and clung to this irrational hope that maybe things wouldn't be so bad after all.
Holding on to anything they could.
Exactly. Then came the terrifying finger game selection by the SS officer, pointing left or right. Life or death decided in an instant. The chilling insight here isn't just a historical detail, it's about how desperately the human mind grasps at any shred of hope, even a delusional one.
And how crushing it is when that hope is inevitably destroyed.
Right. As Frankl describes it, this moment was the culminating point of the first phase of psychological reaction. I struck out my whole former life.
Wow, just like that. An instant obliteration of identity. They were stripped of everything, possessions, their very names, becoming just a number, like Frankl, number 119,104.
Even their physical appearance was taken, forced nakedness, all body hair shaved off.
And then the bath. It's striking that he notes some surprisingly found real water, which must have been some small relief.
A tiny mercy. And Frankl notes a kind of grim humor even emerged, a sort of curious detachment. Finding amusement in their own nakedness, almost relieved that real water actually flowed. A bizarre coping mechanism, perhaps.
Understandable, I suppose, in the face of such absurdity.
That initial shock, though, it quickly gives way to a second, even more profound phase. A deep apathy, what Frankl calls an emotional death.
Right, and this raises an important question. When life is reduced to such a primitive level, hunger, cold, constant threat, what happens to basic human drives? What did he observe?
Well, this apathy, he observed, was a necessary protective shell. Protection against the constant small torments, the beatings, the pervasive filth, and watching the unimaginable suffering of others.
So it numbed them.
Precisely. He gives these stark examples. Watching a 12-year-old boy's frostbitten toes removed without feeling anything, or prisoners stripping a warm body for scraps or shoes immediately after death. It really brings to mind Dostoevsky's haunting statement. Yes, a man can get used to anything, but do not ask us how.
That sounds like a total emotional shutdown, a protective shell, as you said. But if everything is stripped away, if even feelings are dulled, what did Frankl observe about resilience? Did anything get through?
Well, it's interesting. He notes the sexual urge was generally absent. It was completely overshadowed by an overwhelming preoccupation with food.
Survival instinct taking over completely.
Absolutely. He recalls endless debates about how to manage the tiny bread ration. There were these two schools of thought. Eat it immediately to satisfy the gnawing hunger, or save bits for later to extend the fleeting pleasure, and importantly, prevent theft.
Even in that state, strategy matters.
Food was such a focal point that prisoners would often discuss their favorite dishes in vivid detail right up until a guard approached.
Trying to conjure some semblance of normalcy, maybe?
Perhaps. He also describes the ghastly moment of awakening each morning, with the three shrill blows of a whistle tearing them from sleep and dreams, forcing them back to the grim reality, struggling with wet, shrunken shoes on their swollen, often frostbitten feet. Just agony to start the day.
Beyond the purely physical, though, what about the mind, the spirit?
Frankl noted a general cultural hibernation, but with two profound exceptions: politics and religion.
Really?
Yes, almost continuously discussed, often based on rumors flying around the camp. It fed a kind of war of nerves, a desperate search for information, for hope.
In religion.
That interest, he said, was profoundly sincere. Improvised prayers whispered in crowded huts or dark cattle trucks during transport, a deep spiritual yearning.
So sources of hope, however fragile.
He also delves into the relativity of suffering. It's a fascinating concept. Prisoners in one camp might actually envy those in regular prisons.
Because even prison seemed better.
Relatively, yes.
Yep.
And even within the camps, one could envy those with slightly better work details or those in a camp section without a chimney, meaning no crematorium nearby.
God, the calculations they must have made.
Frankl himself felt immense relief at being sent not to the infamous Mauthausen, but only to Dachau, as Dachau initially didn't have its own oven.
Yeah.
It's all relative horror.
And the beatings, it wasn't just physical pain, was it?
No, he emphasizes that. The deepest cut was often the insult, the sheer dehumanization. He recalls a guard playfully throwing a stone at him, like one might provoke an animal, treating him like a beast. That was the core injury.
The inner fortress finding meaning.
It's hard to even comprehend that level of suffering and dehumanization. Yet, Frankl makes this truly counterintuitive observation. Spiritual life could actually deepen in the camps. How is that even possible?
It seems paradoxical, doesn't it? But he explains that sensitive people, though often physically weaker, sometimes suffered less inwardly. They were able somehow to retreat into their inner riches, their spiritual freedom. Their inner life became a fortress.
An inner fortress, I like that.
And a core insight emerges here. Frankl found that maintaining a future goal was absolutely crucial for survival, literally life-saving.
A reason to keep going.
Exactly. He witnessed people dying not primarily from hunger or disease, though those were rampant, but from a lack of hope, from giving up inwardly. He tells this poignant story of a fellow prisoner, a composer, who had a dream predicting the war would end for him on a specific date. When that date passed and liberation hadn't come, he fell ill and died almost immediately.
Wow. As if his body just followed his spirit in giving up.
It suggests his body's resistance was fatally lowered by the disappointment. Frankl also noted the death rate significantly increased between Christmas 1944 and New Year's 1945.
Why then specifically?
Because so many prisoners had clung to the naive hope they'd be home by Christmas. When that hope was dashed, the disillusionment was devastating, often fatal.
It really highlights how a purpose, a why, can literally be a matter of life and death.
Absolutely.
So his focus was on that future, on having a why. What was Frankl's personal why in the midst of all this?
Well, he writes, it was twofold. First, the deep desire to rewrite his lost scientific manuscript, the work of his life, which had been confiscated on arrival. He even managed to jot down notes for it on tiny scraps of paper while desperately ill with typhus.
Incredible dedication. And the second?
His profound thoughts of his wife. He describes how his mind clung to her image with this uncanny acuteness, imagining conversations, hearing her answer him, seeing her smile vividly in his mind.
Even though he didn't know if she was alive or dead.
Correct. And this highlights the extraordinary power of love that he discovered. Frankl realized that love transcends physical presence. It becomes a deep spiritual connection. He understood that the salvation of man is through love and in love. That was the ultimate insight he reached during a grueling march in the dark.
That love's strength persists even if the beloved isn't physically there or even gone.
Yes. That it remains a profound source of meaning and fulfillment, even in utter desolation. It's about recognizing love not just as a feeling, but as an act of spiritual connection that can endure anything.
That's incredibly moving. And it wasn't just love for others, right? He also found meaning in other ways.
Oh, yes. He records prisoners finding profound meaning in fleeting glimpses of beauty, moments snatched from the horror. He recalls beholding the Salzburg Mountains, their summits glowing in the sunset during a transport.
Nature breaking through.
Exactly. Or a spectacular sunset over the Bavarian woods, prompting another prisoner to remark how beautiful the world could be. There was even a simple moment with a bird landing silently on a heap of soil right in front of him while he worked. Tiny moments of grace.
And humor, too. It seems almost impossible.
Yet it happened. Improvised art and humor played a vital role. He mentions a sort of cabaret put on in one of the huts. Prisoners singing Italian arias, hoping for an extra ladle of soup. Frankl even shares a joke he made to his surgeon friend after liberation about being unable to shake camp habits and reflexively shouting, "Action! Action!" during an operation.
Dark humor, maybe, but humor nonetheless.
He called humor another of the soul's weapons in the fight for self-preservation. It created a necessary distance, a moment of rising above the situation.
A way to reclaim some humanity.
Exactly. And this all ties into Nietzsche's profound quote, which Frankl often cited, "He who has a why to live for can bear almost anyhow."
That seems to be the crux of it.
It is. Frankl explains that suffering is an ineradicable part of life. It's unavoidable. The meaning doesn't come from the suffering itself, he's very clear. That would be masochistic if the suffering is avoidable. But meaning comes from how we respond to it, how we bear our burden.
Turning a personal tragedy into a human achievement.
Precisely. Even a life barren of creation or enjoyment, he argued, can find meaning in the attitude one takes toward existence, especially when restricted by external forces. It's a powerful statement about human agency, even in the worst circumstances.
Logotherapy in a nutshell. The theory.
Okay, so having explored the depths of that suffering and the surprising resilience of the inner spirit, the natural question is, how did Frankl translate these intense personal insights into a practical philosophy for, well, for all of us, for people living in our comparatively mundane yet often still challenging world?
That's where logotherapy comes in. He developed this whole school of thought, which he describes as meaning-centered psychotherapy.
And how does it differ from, say, Freudian psychoanalysis?
Well, Frankl contrasted his will to meaning with Freud's emphasis on the pleasure principle and Alfred Adler's focus on the will to power. He believed the search for meaning was the primary motivational force in humans.
And he found evidence for this.
He did. He often cited polls, like one where 89% of people admitted that humans need something to live for, and another where 78% of college students said their first goal was finding a purpose and meaning to my life, ranking it higher than financial success.
That's telling.
A core concept in logotherapy is Frankl's idea of the existential vacuum.
The what now?
The existential vacuum. It's this widespread phenomenon, he observed, particularly in modern affluent societies. It's that hollow feeling many people experience today, even when their material needs are met. That pervasive sense of inner emptiness, restlessness, boredom, or just meaninglessness.
Like something's missing even if you have everything.
Exactly. Think of it as the spiritual equivalent of a nutrient deficiency, but for purpose.
How does this vacuum show up?
He explains it manifests often as what he calls Sunday neurosis, that feeling of depression or emptiness that hits after a busy weekends when the lack of inner content becomes apparent. And he believed it contributes significantly to mass phenomena like depression, aggression, and addiction.
So people try to fill the void.
Often in unhealthy ways. He cited studies suggesting, for instance, that a very high percentage of alcoholics and drug addicts felt a profound sense of meaninglessness. He even linked unemployment neurosis not just to being jobless, but to feeling useless, lacking meaning.
Okay, so it's a real problem. How does logotherapy suggest we fill that vacuum healthily? How do we find meaning?
This is where it gets really practical. Frankl outlines 3 main avenues to discover meaning in life.
Okay, what are they?
First, by creating a work or doing a deed.
So, through achievement or contribution?
Yes, but it isn't just about grand accomplishments. It's about actively contributing through your work, whatever it is, or a creative pursuit, or even small acts of service in your daily life, making a difference, however small.
Right. What's the second way?
Second, by experiencing something or encountering someone.
Experiencing, like, beauty or relationships.
Both. This covers everything from profound love and deep human connection to appreciating the beauty of nature, engaging with art and culture, or simply finding joy and wonder in the everyday, really living and appreciating.
Okay. Create or do, experience or encounter. What's the third?
And this one is perhaps the most profound, given his experiences. The third way is by the attitude we take toward unavoidable suffering.
Ah, back to the core camp insight.
Exactly. But this is a crucial distinction he makes. Meaning is possible in spite of suffering, not because of it.
That's important. He wasn't glorifying suffering itself.
Not at all. Unnecessary suffering, Frankl clarifies, is just masochistic. It's not heroic. The meaning comes from how one chooses to bear the burden, how you respond when life throws something at you that you simply cannot change.
So if you face something like a chronic illness, the meaning isn't in the illness.
Right. It's in the courage or the patience or the compassion or the dignity you cultivate in response to it. That's where the human achievement lies.
This takes us to another critical point. Frankl argues that life isn't really about asking what we expect from life.
No, he flips it.
He says life asks what it expects from us. It's about responsibleness, our duty to respond to life's specific demands on us.
Yes, finding the concrete meaning of the moment. It's captured in what he called the categorical imperative of logotherapy.
Which is?
Live as if you were living already for the second time and as if you had acted the first time as wrongly as you're about to act now.
Wow. That's a powerful thought exercise. A call to personal accountability.
It really is. Reflect and adjust your course now.
He also developed practical techniques from this, didn't he? Paradoxical intention.
Yes, that's a fascinating one, used often for phobias and obsessions. The idea is to prescribe the symptom, in a way. He tells the story of a man with severe sweating anxiety. Instead of trying not to sweat, the man was told to intentionally try to sweat, to show people how much he could sweat, maybe aim for 10 quarts.
And what happened?
He found he couldn't do it when he tried. The humor and detachment broke the anxiety cycle. Same with a writer's cramp patient told to deliberately scribble badly, they found they couldn't.
So it short-circuits the anxiety.
Exactly. It helps break hyperintention, that self-defeating thing where trying too hard makes something impossible, like trying desperately to fall asleep. And it also breaks hyperreflection, where obsessively focusing on a symptom just makes it worse. You detach from the symptom, often with humor.
The aftermath and lasting legacy.
So what happens after surviving such an unimaginable ordeal? When freedom finally arrives, was it just instant relief and joy?
Not exactly. Frankl describes the initial shock of liberation quite differently. He calls it depersonalization.
Depersonalization, meaning what?
An inability to feel immediate joy, a sense of unreality, a ghostly aspect to the outside world they re-entered. He remembers not being able to truly believe it was real, partly because they'd been deceived by dreams of freedom so many times before. The reality felt dreamlike.
They had to readjust completely.
Completely. They had to slowly relearn simple pleasures. He mentions the wonder of seeing a rooster with multicolored feathers, or just eating ravenously for days, finally without fear or limit. It was a slow return to being human.
But that sudden release must have had dangers too.
It did. Frankl noted two major threats to the liberated prisoner's character, psychologically speaking: bitterness and disillusionment.
Bitterness, why?
Bitterness often arose from encountering societal apathy or well-meaning but inadequate responses from people outside. Hearing phrases like, "oh, we didn't know," or even, "we suffered too," which, however true in its own way, seemed to minimize their unique and unspeakable ordeal.
That must have been incredibly difficult to hear.
Deeply. And then there was disillusionment.
When reality didn't match the dream.
Exactly. When loved ones they'd dreamed of returning to weren't there to greet them, having perished. Or just finding that the world they dreamed of freedom in seemed indifferent, had moved on, or didn't quite match the idealized picture they'd clung to for survival.
A final cruelty, almost.
In a way.
In one of the most powerful insights from the book, though, Frankl suggests there are really only two races of men in the world. Not based on nationality or anything else.
Yes, he says the decent and the indecent. And crucially, you find both everywhere.
Penetrating into all groups of society.
All groups, even within the camps themselves. He saw it firsthand.
He gives examples, right?
Specific examples. He mentions Capo's prisoners with privileges who were actually kinder and more humane than some of the SS guards. And, remarkably, an SS commander whose life was actually saved after the war by 3 young Jewish prisoners he'd overseen, who insisted to the Allied forces that he had treated them relatively decently and shouldn't be harmed.
Incredible. Acts of decency in the midst of hell.
And small ones, too. He recalls a foreman, not a prisoner, who secretly slipped him a piece of bread. A tiny act, but in that context, it was profoundly moving. A spark of humanity.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, what did these experiences confirm for Frankl about human nature?
They profoundly confirmed for him that human beings are not nothing but a product of their environment or conditions, as some deterministic views might suggest. He witnessed prisoners behaving like swine, as he put it, resorting to brutality themselves. But he also saw others acting like saints, sharing their last crust of bread, comforting the dying.
Proving what?
Proving that humans retain a fundamental freedom, the freedom to choose one's attitude, one's internal response, even in the most extreme, limiting circumstances.
It's like being trapped in a storm you mentioned earlier. You can't control the weather.
But you still get to choose how you react, whether you curse the sky, or find a way to endure, or even find some meaning within it. It's not about being free from conditions, which is often impossible, but free within them the freedom to take a stand toward those conditions. He even saw a former brutal capo, a mass murderer, in prison after the war, transform into the best comrade imaginable. People can change.
And Frankl himself. Despite losing his entire family, his wife, parents, brother in the camps, he dedicated his life after liberation to this message, didn't he?
He absolutely did.
Yeah.
He returned to Vienna, committed himself to healing and teaching, advocating for reconciliation over revenge. He chose not to condemn wholesale those who failed to resist evil under duress.
And the meaning of his own life.
His famous answer was simple and profound: to help others find the meaning of theirs. He truly lived his philosophy.
Showing that even from the deepest abyss, incredible purpose can emerge.
That defiance in the face of suffering, the ability to choose one's attitude, that's the core of Frankl's message and his lasting legacy. He challenged the idea that suffering is inherently meaningless. Instead, he asserted that it can be a source of meaning if we consciously choose to make it so through our response.
A message that clearly continues to resonate.
Deeply. With so many people searching for purpose, connection, and resilience in their own lives, it proves that meaning isn't just found out there in external circumstances, but in here, in our internal stance toward life.
So maybe the final thought for you, the listener, is this. What is life asking of you right now? What is the challenge, big or small, that you face? Could it become an opportunity for growth, for what Frankl called a human achievement? What meaning can you create through your actions, experience through connection or beauty, or choose through your attitude, especially when faced with suffering you cannot avoid? It really invites you to reflect on your own why, doesn't it? And how you might choose to respond.